The announcement, if true, would represent one of the most extraordinary shifts in the modern history of the British royal family. A dramatic claim has suddenly placed Princess Anne and Catherine, Princess of Wales, at the center of a story about leadership, succession, and the future direction of the monarchy. The claim is simple, but its implications are enormous. According to the headline, Princess Anne's last public role would involve symbolically crowning Catherine as the family's new leader. For royal watchers, that image is impossible to ignore. Princess Anne, one of the most experienced and respected senior members of the royal family, standing beside Catherine at a moment that supposedly signals the beginning of a new era. But what exactly would such a moment mean? Was Anne really stepping back? Was Catherine being given a new position inside the family? And could the Princess of Wales truly be emerging as the figure expected to lead the next generation of the monarchy? Before the story goes any further, there is one crucial fact that cannot be overlooked. The information provided does not establish that Princess Anne has announced a final public role, formally crowned Catherine as the royal family's new leader, or stepped down from her public duties. No confirmed ceremony, official statement, or verified event has been provided. That means the dramatic claim cannot be presented as an established fact. There can be no invented ceremony, no fictional announcement, no imaginary speech from Princess Anne, and no fabricated moment in which Catherine is officially declared the family's new leader. But behind this unverified claim lies a much bigger story, one that is very real. The British monarchy is moving through a period of generational transition, and at the center of that transition stand two remarkable women. Princess Anne, whose life has been defined by decades of royal duty, and Catherine, Princess of Wales, who represents a major part of the monarchy's future. The contrast between them is fascinating. Anne was born into the royal family as the daughter of Queen Elizabeth II. Catherine entered it from outside. Anne grew up watching the monarchy from the inside during one of the most historic reigns in British history. Catherine has experienced the extraordinary challenge of joining the institution, adapting to its traditions, and gradually becoming one of its most recognizable figures. Their journeys could not be more different, and yet both have become closely associated with one central idea: duty. That is why the suggestion of Princess Anne symbolically passing something to Catherine immediately captured attention. Not because there is evidence that Anne has literally handed Catherine a new title, but because the monarchy itself is slowly moving from one generation to another, and Catherine is becoming increasingly important to what comes next. But that was only the beginning. To understand why the idea of Anne and Catherine standing together carries so much symbolic power, it is necessary to understand where the royal family stands today. King Charles represents the current reign. Queen Camilla stands beside him. Prince William, as Prince of Wales, is the heir to the throne, and Catherine stands beside William as the woman expected to one day become Queen Consort. Behind them are Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, the generation that will carry the family's story even further into the future. That means the monarchy is currently living through several eras at once. The experience of the past remains present through figures such as Princess Anne. The responsibilities of the current reign belong to King Charles and Queen Camilla, and the future is increasingly represented by William and Catherine. So when royal watchers ask whether Catherine is becoming a new kind of leader within the family, they are really asking something much larger. What will the monarchy look like when the next generation takes full responsibility? And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Catherine does not need to be officially crowned by Princess Anne to become one of the central figures of the monarchy's future. Her position beside Prince William already places her at the heart of what comes next. If William eventually becomes king, Catherine is expected to take on an even more significant role.
The exact way that role develops will depend on the circumstances of the future, but there is little doubt that public attention will increasingly focus on the Prince and Princess of Wales as the monarchy continues its generational transition. And perhaps that is why the title feels so dramatic. It takes a gradual process and transforms it into one powerful image. Princess Anne, the embodiment of experience, supposedly recognizing Catherine as the future. But what would make that image so significant? The answer may lie in what Anne herself represents. For decades, Princess Anne has carried out public responsibilities with extraordinary consistency. She has witnessed the monarchy through periods of celebration, uncertainty, and profound change. She knew the institution under her mother, Queen Elizabeth II. She continues to serve during the reign of her brother, King Charles, and she has watched Prince William grow from a child into the man expected to one day become king. Anne's experience cannot simply be replaced. It belongs to a lifetime spent inside one of the world's most famous institutions. But time changes every institution. New generations eventually take on greater responsibility, and the people who once stood in the background gradually move towards the center. Catherine's journey reflects exactly that process. When she first entered public life beside Prince William, she was seen primarily through the lens of their relationship. But over time, her role developed. She became the Duchess of Cambridge. She became a mother to 3 children.
And following King Charles's accession, she became the Princess of Wales. With each transition, the expectations surrounding her changed. She was no longer simply the woman who had married the future king. She became part of the future structure of the monarchy itself. And what happened next changed the way royal watchers began looking at her. The question was no longer simply whether Catherine could adapt to royal life. She had already spent years proving that she could carry out a public role under intense scrutiny. The bigger question became what kind of queen she might eventually become. Would she follow established traditions? Would she help William modernize the monarchy? Would the next royal era look dramatically different from the current one? And perhaps most importantly, how would Catherine use the experience she had gained from the generations who came before her? That brings us back to Princess Anne. There is something deeply symbolic about the connection between experience and transition. Anne represents a generation that understands the demands of royal life at the highest level. Catherine represents the generation preparing to inherit those responsibilities. One has spent decades carrying out duty. The other is moving towards an even more central position. But there is no confirmed public moment in which Anne has announced that Catherine is now the family's leader. The title remains a dramatic interpretation, not an established event. Still, the underlying question remains. Could Catherine already be becoming one of the most influential figures in the future direction of the monarchy? The answer may be unfolding gradually, and perhaps that is the real story. Because leadership inside a royal institution does not always arrive with a ceremony. Sometimes it develops through years of preparation, through public engagements, through experience, through difficult moments, through the ability to remain calm when attention becomes overwhelming, and through the gradual building of public trust. Catherine's future role may be shaped by all of those things. But behind the scenes, another major development is already taking place. Prince William is moving closer to the center of royal responsibility. As heir to the throne, his importance will only increase. And wherever William's future leads, Catherine's role will be connected to it. They are not simply 2 separate public figures. Together, they represent the next chapter of the monarchy. That makes Catherine's relationship with other senior royals particularly important. Princess Anne belongs to the generation that has already spent a lifetime supporting the institution. William and Catherine belong to the generation preparing to carry it forward. There is a natural passing of responsibility that occurs over time, not necessarily through dramatic announcements, not through secret ceremonies, but through the gradual evolution of roles. And this is where the claim about Anne's last public role becomes particularly interesting. Princess Anne's actual future responsibilities have not been established by the information provided. There is no basis here for claiming that she is retiring or stepping away from public life. But the public fascination with the idea reflects something larger. People understand that no generation can serve forever. Eventually, the responsibilities carried by one group of royals will increasingly move toward the next. The question is not whether history changes, it always does. The question is how the transition happens. Will it be gradual? Will William and Catherine take on more responsibility over time? Will Princess Anne continue to play an important role while the next generation prepares? And how will the monarchy preserve the experience of its senior figures while allowing the future generation to establish its own identity? Those questions may define the next royal era. And the detail that followed is what makes Catherine's position even more significant. She is not preparing for this future alone. Prince William is the heir to the throne, but Catherine may one day stand beside him at the center of the institution. Their relationship will therefore play an important part in how the next generation of monarchy is perceived. And then there are their children. Prince George is directly behind William in the line of succession.
Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis represent the generation following him. The choices William and Catherine make as parents may influence the future relationship between the monarchy and the younger generation. That is why Catherine's role is about more than public appearances. She is also raising children whose lives are connected to the future of the crown. One of them may eventually become king, and the others will have to discover their own paths within an extraordinary family. Perhaps this is what makes the idea of Catherine becoming a new leader so compelling. Leadership does not always mean holding the highest constitutional position. William will not replace the king while he is monarch. William remains the heir, and the constitutional structure of the monarchy is clearly defined. But public leadership can take many forms. A person can influence the future direction, public image, and stability of an institution without holding its highest title. And Catherine may increasingly occupy that kind of position. The Princess of Wales has become one of the most recognizable members of the royal family. Her future role is directly connected to William's. And as the monarchy looks ahead, public attention will inevitably focus on the couple expected to lead its next major chapter. But what role could Princess Anne play in that transition? That question may be more interesting than the dramatic headline itself. Anne possesses something that William and Catherine are still building: experience across generations. She understands what it means to support a reigning monarch. She understands how public duty can change over decades, and she understands that the survival of the monarchy depends partly on its ability to adapt without abandoning the foundations that give it meaning. That experience could remain enormously valuable to the next generation, and perhaps the greatest passing of the torch will not happen through a literal ceremony at all. Perhaps it will happen through advice, through example, through the traditions that experienced royals pass on to those preparing to take greater responsibility. That kind of transition may never produce a dramatic photograph. There may be no crown placed on Catherine's head by Princess Anne, no grand declaration, no historic speech announcing a new family leader. But history can still change quietly, and that may be exactly what is happening. The monarchy of the future is slowly becoming visible. William is no longer simply a young prince. He is the Prince of Wales and heir to the throne. Catherine is no longer simply the newest member of the family. She is the Princess of Wales and a future queen consort. George, Charlotte, and Louis are no longer only young children in occasional public appearances. They represent the generation that follows. And Princess Anne now occupies a position that few people in the family can match. She is a bridge between the past and the future.
That makes her relationship with the next generation symbolically important. And this is where the story becomes even more emotional. One day, Catherine may find herself carrying responsibilities that Anne has spent decades observing from another perspective. Catherine may have to navigate the pressures of becoming queen. She may face the challenge of supporting William while also maintaining her own public identity. She may have to help prepare George for responsibilities that most children can barely imagine. And when those moments arrive, the lessons of previous generations could become invaluable.
Perhaps the greatest royal transition is not about replacing one person with another. Perhaps it is about ensuring that experience is not lost when leadership changes. Princess Anne's generation understands the monarchy shaped by Queen Elizabeth II. William and Catherine's generation will have to shape what comes next. The challenge will be deciding what to preserve and what to change. That may be the real mystery behind the dramatic claim. What kind of monarchy will Catherine help create? Will she follow the example of the women who came before her? Or will she and William establish an entirely new approach? The answer may be a combination of both. Tradition may remain important, but every generation faces circumstances its predecessors could never have predicted. The modern media environment is different. Public expectations are different. The younger generation communicates differently, and the monarchy will continue facing questions about relevance, transparency, and public trust. William and Catherine will eventually have to navigate all of that, and perhaps Catherine's greatest challenge will be balancing the symbolic traditions of the crown with the realities of modern life. That is a responsibility no ceremonial crowning can prepare someone for. It takes time, experience, resilience, and the ability to understand that every public action may be interpreted in ways that were never intended. Catherine has already experienced the intensity of that attention, and the years ahead may bring even more. But what happened next in the story of the future monarchy may depend largely on timing. No one can predict exactly when the next transition will occur. No one can know the precise circumstances in which William and Catherine may eventually assume their future roles. And no dramatic headline can turn a constitutional process into an established event before it happens. But the direction of travel is clear. The next generation is preparing, slowly, publicly, and often under enormous pressure. Princess Anne may continue to represent the strength of experience. Catherine may increasingly represent the strength of the future. And between those two positions lies one of the most fascinating questions in the entire story of the modern monarchy. Can the next generation learn from the past without becoming trapped by it? For Catherine, that question may one day define her role. She will carry the history attached to the title Princess of Wales. She may eventually become queen.
She will stand beside William as he faces responsibilities that have been part of his destiny since birth. And she will also remain a mother to 3 children whose own futures are being watched by millions. That is an extraordinary combination of responsibilities. Perhaps this is why the idea of Catherine as a central family figure resonates so strongly. The future monarchy will not be built by William alone. A modern royal partnership may require both William and Catherine to carry different responsibilities, while presenting a united vision of the institution's future. And Princess Anne's generation may provide an important reminder of what sustained royal duty actually requires: consistency, commitment, and the ability to continue when public attention moves elsewhere. That may be the greatest symbolic connection between Anne and Catherine. Not a literal crowning, not a secret announcement, but the understanding that royal life is ultimately measured across years, not headlines. A dramatic claim can dominate attention for a day. A public appearance can create discussion for a week. But a royal legacy is built over decades. Princess Anne has already built hers. Catherine's is still being written. And perhaps that is why this moment feels so important. The monarchy is standing between generations. One generation carries memories of the past, another is preparing to shape the future, and the transition is happening before the world's eyes. So, was Princess Anne's last public role really to crown Catherine as the new leader of the family? Based on the information provided, that specific event has not been established. There is no confirmed ceremony, no verified announcement, no official declaration that Anne has stepped down, and no evidence that Catherine has formally been given a new leadership title. But the deeper story may be even more significant. Catherine is already moving toward a future in which her influence and responsibilities could become greater than ever before. Princess Anne represents decades of knowledge and experience, and William and Catherine represent the generation that may eventually inherit the responsibility of leading the monarchy into its next era. The transition may not happen with a crown. It may not happen with a dramatic announcement. It may happen gradually, through responsibility passing from one generation to another. And perhaps one day, when Catherine stands beside King William, if and when that moment comes, the world will look back at these years and realize that the transition had been happening long before anyone officially declared it. The question now is not whether Catherine will become more important to the future of the monarchy. Her position already ensures that. The real question is what kind of royal future she and William will create. Will they preserve the traditions embodied by Princess Anne's generation? Will they reshape the institution for George, Charlotte, and Louis? And when the next chapter finally begins, will Catherine become one of the defining figures of a monarchy that looks very different from the one Princess Anne was born into? That answer has not yet been written, but with every passing year, the future is moving closer, and perhaps the most important transition of all is already underway.
Charlotte is still growing up. Her future should not be decided by speculation. Her identity should not be reduced to the question of what role she might play for George one day. She is an individual, just as George is more than the future role that awaits him. And maybe that is the lesson both siblings will have to learn. Titles can describe their constitutional positions, but they cannot fully describe who they are. George is not only a future king. Charlotte is not only a future royal sister. They are children becoming individuals, and the people they become may matter far more than the labels placed upon them today. Yet there is still one final layer to this story. A day may come when George has to leave behind the relative freedom of childhood completely and step into a role from which there is no easy escape. If he becomes king, the transition will not simply change his life, it could change the lives of everyone closest to him. Charlotte may watch her brother take on responsibilities that transform his daily existence. The person she grew up with could suddenly become the center of an institution watched by the entire world. And perhaps George may one day look at his sister and feel the weight of what that means. Not because he is losing her, but because their relationship will have to adapt. The brother and sister who grew up together may eventually stand in a completely different world, one as monarch, one as his sister. And yet, behind the titles, they may still carry the same memories. That is why the future relationship between George and Charlotte could be so important. The monarchy will eventually have advisors, officials, and institutions, but those things cannot replace the people who knew George before the responsibility arrived. Charlotte could be part of the emotional foundation that keeps him connected to the person he was before becoming the person history expects him to be. And perhaps George could offer Charlotte something equally important, a sense of family that exists beyond public expectations. Because Charlotte, too, will face enormous attention. Her choices will be analyzed, her relationships will be discussed, her future will be predicted by people who know almost nothing about her private hopes or ambitions. Having a brother who understands that pressure may become invaluable. And maybe that is the real emotional truth hidden behind this dramatic story. Not that George learned a shocking secret, not that Charlotte is facing an invented tragedy, but that both siblings may eventually discover something far more difficult. They cannot protect each other from the future. George cannot remove the public attention surrounding Charlotte. Charlotte cannot remove the responsibility waiting for George. All they can do is remain connected while their lives change around them. And perhaps that is why the idea of George becoming emotional is so powerful. Even a future king may one day wish he could stop time. He may wish childhood could last longer. He may wish that the people closest to him could remain exactly as they were before responsibility changed everything. But life does not work that way. Charlotte will grow, George will grow, Louis will grow. Their childhood will become memory, and eventually the future that now feels distant will begin arriving one responsibility at a time. For George, that could mean greater public duties. For Charlotte, it could mean deciding what place she wants within the changing monarchy. For both of them, it may mean discovering whether the bond they formed as children can survive the extraordinary pressures waiting ahead. And perhaps one day Britain will see Prince George standing before the nation in a role he has prepared for his entire life. The world may see a king. The history books may see another chapter in the monarchy. But somewhere nearby could stand the sister who knew him before any of it happened, Princess Charlotte, the girl who grew up beside him before the responsibilities became overwhelming, the sister who shared the years nobody can ever give back. And if George ever does carry the weight of the crown, perhaps the most important people around him will not be those chosen by title or tradition. Perhaps they will be the people who were there from the beginning, his family, his brother, his sister. And that leaves us with one final question. As Prince George and Princess Charlotte grow older and their lives begin to move toward very different futures, will the destiny waiting for them create distance between brother and sister? Or will the extraordinary world they were born into become the very reason they remain closer than anyone ever expected? Because long after the headlines disappear and the childhood photographs become history, one thing may matter more than crowns, titles, or succession. Whether through every change still to come, Prince George and Princess Charlotte can remain what they were before the world began defining their future: brother and sister.